Look, Ma, no hands. I'm going to put that
Look, Ma, no
in the
hands.
definition. I'm going to put that in the word map. That'll be good.
I don't think it's going to really show up in there.
Oh, it will. It's going to be like that. No.
It'll be tiny.
It'll be like the Easter egg. And once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Success Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as I seek out and interview leaders and practitioners who are innovating and building great scaled CS programs. My goal is to share what I've learned and to bring you along with me for the ride so that you get the insights that you need to build and evolve your own digital CS program. If you'd like more info, want to get in touch or sign up for the latest updates, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. And if you have a question or commentary to be used in an upcoming episode, call us and leave a message at 512-222-7381. For now, let's get started. Greetings from a pretty cold Austin, Texas, and welcome to the show. It's that time of year where here in Texas we have 2 or 3 weeks of cold weather before it goes back to hot. So if you're watching on YouTube, hence the beanie, I didn't feel like getting fancy for you. So, but no apologies, right? Before we get into today's show, which is a good one, I do have a little bit of an announcement and a contest for you to enter into, actually, where I'm in a media partnership with the Customer Success Collective here at the Digital Customer Success Podcast. And I'll be speaking at the Customer Success Festival here in Austin, Texas on February 13th and 14th, as well as hosting a panel. So if that is an event that you have been wanting to go to, but you haven't registered for yet, I do want to announce a contest that's going to run until January 31st. So you've got a couple of weeks to enter, basically. And the contest is for a free gold pass admission, which is like $1,300 or something like that. So it's no small potatoes. So we're going to be giving away one gold pass to that event. And the way that you're going to enter that contest is by basically doing three things. First off, one of the ways that we grow the show is by making it easy to find for folks. And one of the ways that we accomplish that is by getting reviews on various platforms. So first thing you'll want to do to enter this contest is leave us a review on Apple or Spotify or whatever your podcast platform of choice is. And once you've left that review, just email me a screenshot of it real quick. Alex@digitalcustomersuccess.com is where you can send that to. Second is there is a link to a post in the show notes. So what you want to do is just go to that LinkedIn post, like it, and then lastly, I'd love for you to comment on that post with what you might be looking forward to at this event or any questions that you have in this event. Something beyond just first or, I'm here, engage a little bit. So we'd love to see that. So again, three things you got to do: enter, leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice, and email me a screenshot, alex@digitalcustomersuccess.com. Go to that LinkedIn post and like it, and then leave a comment on that post with something substantial, something about the event, something that you're looking forward to, or something that you would like to see there. Any questions, whatever that may be. Got it? Excellent. Hope to see you there in middle of February. On to today's show, which is a great one. I had this conversation with Anita Toth, say a month or two ago, and it kind of left a lasting impression on me, just because of what we talked about, yes, but also just the depth at which we talked about it, and she and I have a pretty good kind of back and forth rapport, but we spent a lot of time discussing how CS can elevate itself primarily through the use of this magical treasure trove of data that we end up collecting, and how to really turn that into insights for the rest of the business, and how to really engage with other leaders around the business. We also then dug into a pretty lengthy discussion about generative AI, a little bit of speculation about the future of AI within customer success and other practices, and just, kind of some interesting tidbits about it. The reason why Anita brings so much to the table is because she is a researcher at heart. She has a background in academia. We talk a little bit about her transition from academia into customer success and what she does now. One thing that I wanted to mention that didn't really get brought up in the show, but that Anita has just launched is a new workshop. It's basically a CS leadership workshop. She says it much better in her own words on her sales page around it. But it basically says, stop running away from your executive seat at the table and start leveraging your customer expertise to prove your value and own retention revenue today. A lot of what she talked about in today's episode feed right into what she's doing in this workshop. So if you like it, go check out her website, ati.ac, which is linked down below. And I'll have a link to the workshop as well. So you can go check that out. But okay, enough of my yapping. Here we go. This is an awesome episode with Anita Toth. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I sure hope that you do too. Well, Anita, I don't think we're here to talk about that necessarily.
Oh yeah.
But
okay, we better get really started.
I think maybe we should get started talking about some CS. But I'm extremely excited that you have graciously agreed to lend me an hour of your time to be on the show, because you have lots of cool things to say. I've enjoyed our conversations when it comes to CS and some of the things that you're up to. I guess, without kind of asking the obligatory, like, how'd you get into CS and what's your background, all that kind of stuff. I do want to get a window into kind of this 15-year block of time spent at McMaster and your university kind of higher ed background, and really how that has led into CS, because I mean, there are origin stories that are all over the place, right? You've got marketers that have come into CS. You've got product people. You've got, various kind of expertise levels, here and there. But you don't hear a lot of kind of folks that come from higher ed. So I'd love to get your perspective on your history, but then also how that has informed your life in CS.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I have to say, I love to learn, which is why once I got my master's, I the very next day, actually, September 10th, 2001, was my very first day working in that research institute. And then we all know what happened on the second day of the job.
Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah, it was crazy. And what I really loved about academia actually is just generating new ideas, generating new ways of thinking, and trying to push boundaries. Now, the way that it's done, though, in academia is different than what it's done in business, because you've got checks and balances. You have to get things peer reviewed. You can't just put things out there and say, hey, look, I've got this, this plan. I've created this framework and I think it's going to work, and then throw it out to the world. So the rigor that comes with it is, in some ways, you almost feel a bit stifling if you're not used to it, in terms of innovative ideas and trying different things. But at the same time, it was just awesome to be around all of these great thinkers. And I loved it. I really did. And it was hard to move on. I was laid off December 23rd. Yep. December 23rd, 2015. So coming up to 8 years that I was laid off, and then started my post-academic journey.
Now, is that date seared into your memory because it was, obviously a very important date, or are you one of those disgusting people that just knows dates?
No, I don't. I forget my own birthdays. Sometimes my kids have had to remind me. It's terrible. So, yeah, it seared into my mind because, oh, I was awful. I'm sitting in my boss's office. He's been my boss for like 6 months, right? So, very short period of time. And he said, you know, your layoff date is going to be December 23rd. And then he looked at me and said this. I couldn't believe it. It's because I don't want to pay your benefits into the new year. I just went like, I didn't say anything. I was just so stunned because the university closes for 2 weeks. Almost every university does, right? Over the Christmas holidays. So the last day of working was December 23rd. We shut down on the 24th. So that's what he said to me. And that's why it's forever seared into my mind. I don't want to pay your benefits into the following year.
That is the opposite of emotional intelligence.
It was just awful. And then he gave me, are you ready for this? Then he gave me my Christmas gift.
Oh, good. Yeah. Do you still have that too?
No.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Yeah. Okay. I love it. I love it. I mean, I don't love the fact that you got laid off, but I do like it because now you're with us. You're among the good people.
It's become one of those, like, at the time devastating, but in retrospect was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me.
Yeah, pushed you out the nest a little bit.
Yep, sure did.
I do want to hit on that a little bit though, because like, you know, those moments happen to everyone, and I think some people handle them better than others, but usually, you know, hopefully, at least in my history, I've been presented with those moments a few times and have somehow managed to kind of turn that into, you know, into something positive, whether it be a learning experience or whether it be like a, you know, new opportunity or recognition that, hey, I want to go learn XYZ. So what was that for you? Like, what was that journey for you? And, you know, what did you hit on?
I think it's wild that you asked that, because I was going to say what I had prior to that were golden handcuffs. My job required a master's degree, which I had. There were very few people in the university that could do what I did because of my subject matter expertise. And I was miserable there for some of the reasons I mentioned. Like, it can be sort of a stifling environment. Everything's so process driven and takes forever. Like, it's not uncommon that you submit a paper for peer review and it takes 8 months to a year to get it published, just because there's so much back and forth with it. And I was unhappy and I didn't know it until December 24th. The day after, I actually felt hugely liberated. And it was only once everything was cut off, there was no chance of turning back, did I realize how unhappy I had been, but was convincing myself that I really was happy. I loved what I did, but I did not love the environment I was in and all of that. Even the word stifle says a lot about how I felt about it. I felt really hemmed in. So that layoff gave me the freedom then to say, okay, I have this skill set. I love to ask questions. I love to learn what's in people's heads, what drives them, what excites them, what scares them, all of these things. So what can I do with this? And that's when I started to venture out in the world with this, you know, little platter of skill sets and went, where can I make this fit? Where can I make this work?
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. One of the things that I find fascinating about you is that you are a researcher at heart. In fact, I think when we first met, one of the first things out of your mouth was like, "Hey, I'm really deep into this research on XYZ and whatnot." And I find that insanely refreshing because there are many, 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 many people who, you know, educate themselves and kind of get into the surface of something. And, you know, maybe there's a level of expertise, you experience some things as a role, but I don't know that CS is very intimate with this notion of like deep research on stuff. I think there's a couple, like Greg Danes, for instance. I think he
Hmm.
comes to
Hmm.
mind because he's got just a plethora of amazing data and insights. But it's a very select few that go that deep and who could legitimately call themselves researchers. And I guess where I'm going with this is I'm just curious as to, what kind of process or philosophies do you bring into wanting to understand something deeply? Like, where do you go in your brain, but then also physically?
Um, I my big thing is looking for patterns.
Mm,
Where are patterns? And like just even in answering this question, I'm just going to switch it a tiny bit to see
sure.
if this can help with, you know, if CSMs are listening, customer success leaders are listening. It's about standardizing. How can we standardize this process?
Hmm.
And in understanding that, so like I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday, and one of the comments was around customer feedback. Well, why not just use QBRs? And I said, because they're not a standardized way to collect information.
Hmm.
So just coming with that scientific approach of
Yeah.
how can we standardize what we're collecting so that we can start figuring out what is a genuine pattern from
Hmm.
one that isn't. So we have anecdotes all over the place. Great. But how many of them
Yeah.
hold or are valid over that customer segment, that our
Yeah.
entire customer base? If you can
Yeah.
just like make that tiny switch to say, how can we start standardizing, mostly because again, I'm qualitative research, the
Hmm.
qualitative feedback we receive, it's going to be night and day, because then you can start seeing trends over time.
Yeah. Yeah. If we're asking things in different ways all over the place, we're
Hmm.
going to get different results all over the place. Yeah. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is love it or hate it. That's kind of why NPS is kind of so powerful, because people are used to seeing that question. People are
Yeah.
used to answering that question. People are used to that 10-point scale, or I guess 11-point scale. Um, like, so people are used to that. People are used to kind of CSAT, if you will. But then to your point, and what's interesting is your answer kind of toes the line between what I think a lot of people would say, which is um, a lot of it depends on your customer base, and it depends on your product, and it depends on whether you own renewals or not, and it depends on XYZ. um, but I do feel like there's a level of standardization that we could benefit from.
Yeah. Regardless,
Yeah.
of whether it's digital customer success or high touch, the customer feedback you're collecting through surveys, through interviews, through focus groups, that's your standardization. It's
Hmm.
now you can also standardize in some other ways, but it's no longer first person. So with your let's say your CSM notes after meetings have, specific things that must be filled out after
Yeah.
each of those. So that's a type of standardization, but that's now secondhand because it's filtered through the individual
Right.
who's inputting in the form.
Yeah.
It's not as clean data is really what
Yeah.
it is. It's biased through that individual's interpretation. But firsthand data, those customer interviews, those
Hmm.
surveys, focus groups, when you standardize and ask the same set of questions over
Yep.
time, then you're able to say, compare apples to apples. In Q1, it was this, you know,
Yeah.
2 years later, in Q1, it's this. Okay, we can
Right.
see that there's a difference because we have ensured that there's no change in what we are asking. And
Yeah.
so it's possible like throughout the company. And then you can start testing. Okay, so if this is our standard question, if we change it to this, how does it change?
Right. Yeah.
Then you can
Exactly.
start seeing, but if you're constantly changing things, then you have no baseline to measure
No.
against.
Hmm. Yeah. Super smart. And I completely agree. It requires you to be very diligent in your design processes,
Yeah,
and
it does.
very very conscious of what it is you're putting out there, and kind of a commitment level. So, I feel like this segues into a question that I ask all my guests if you listen to the show before you know what's coming, which is to say, like, you know, I would love your kind of elevator pitch, quick definition of what you think digital customer success is based on your experience and your background and your criteria.
Honestly, I'm laughing because it is
Yeah.
so silly. This is honestly,
this
is all I can think of when I saw this question in your email.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, look, Ma, no hands. That's what
I
it
love
feels
it.
like to me versus high touch, right? So it's the tools, it's the insights to do this, the same thing that customer success is there to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Value, outcomes for the customer.
Yeah. Love it. Short and sweet. Look, Ma, no hands. I'm going to put that in, in the definition. I'm going to put that in the word map. That'll be good.
I don't think it's going to really show up in there.
Oh, it will. It's going to be like that. No,
it'll be tiny.
It'll be like the Easter egg. One of the things we talked about, before recording this show, was this notion of really wanting to elevate customer success to the adult table instead of, like, the kids' table at your Thanksgiving feast or whatever feast it is you have. I'd love your insight on what that looks like for you, and what that recipe to get there is, based on what you're advising, your clients on.
Yeah, this has become a personal mission of mine. I see what customer success is doing. Honestly, out of all the jobs I've had, and I don't care, I'll say my age. I'm 51 years old, so I've been around the block a few times with different types of jobs. Customer success is honestly one of the best communities I've ever landed in. And it hurt so much to see in, 2022, throughout 2023 or late 2022, all the layoffs, all of the misconceptions of what customer success is that still float around. I see it on LinkedIn, and it breaks my heart. So I feel like this is my personal mission. I want to help elevate customer success from the little table to the big table, kids table to the adults. And I've done a lot of thinking, of course, a lot of research, digging around. How can I do this given this little platter of skill sets that I have? And I came up with something I call the customer success goldmine framework. Customer success is the only team that has such deep customer insights data. Sure, support has some sales, product, marketing, but not to the degree that customer success does. And in trying to figure out how can customer success become essentially a critical business function, I was trying to see, okay, what can we do? Well, if you're sitting on this gold mine of customer insights data, one of the best things you could do is start feeding it to the rest of the company, but not just sort of, here,
not in
there,
spreadsheet
and everywhere
format.
Right. But it's through, anyway, it's a framework. Go out, start talking. I say marketing first, not sales, not product. Go to your CMO, your head, your director of marketing, and start there. And the reason is marketing is so removed from the customers. They don't interact with them in the same way. Product often does their own sort of, user experience, user interface research. So they are, sales are, but marketing isn't. And speak with that CMO, head, director of marketing, and say, I'm sitting on this data here. How can I help you better attract ideal customers? And start bridging that gap. So an example is, digging through to see, let's say your best customers, your top 20%, they are doing things differently than the other 80%. In not just in terms of the outcomes they're getting, they think differently, they act differently, they see your product as fitting into their ecosystem differently. By sharing that level of information with marketing, then marketing can go out and find more of those types of customers. And then once you've gotten proof of concept with marketing, then you can move on to product and sales. And then by being this constant flow of customer insight data that is essentially real time, not only do you help better, find better customers, identify, the product roadmap in terms of features, faster sales. But the bigger thing that customer success has is you hear what's changing with your customers faster than anybody else.
That's right.
And that becomes a competitive advantage.
So true. Like, just, a lot, I think the go-to is like customer success is like there to protect revenue and ensure the renewal and, NRR. That's why NRR and GRR are like the gold metrics and standards. And they're indicators for how healthy a customer is, but that's like what the business has gone off of in terms of customer health by and large is whether they're renewing or not. And I love what you're saying about the fact that, yes, we are not only the collectors of data from all around the organization, but then we build on top of that by virtue of the relationship that we have with these customers. And I think this is my personal opinion, we're entering into an interesting age where we have all of this data, but now we're starting to have these amazing tools that are coming in and producing these insights for us using the data without us having to like go down Power BI rabbit holes and like all this kind of stuff. Like we're now starting to be able to easily generate insights that can be relevant cross-functionally, which I think is fascinating. I think we're just scratching the surface on that stuff.
I agree.
Yeah, it's exciting. So it's like that should be the main product of a CS organization.
Yeah.
Sure, we're there to help with the renewal, but the main product is like, what can we do? What can product do to improve? What can marketing do to, drive advocacy? What can sales do to help? I mean, it's like, yeah.
And I think what it is customer success leaders do not really understand business. They don't understand how businesses run. By using this method and going over, and I say going over as if they're like walking over, might be, but by creating this link with marketing, it starts to give the customer success leader a better idea of what drives that CMO, what are their biggest challenges, and then you're sitting on this gold mine of customer insights data. How can you use that to improve their metrics, make their life better? And at the same time, then you're starting to understand the front end of the business, right? And what's important there. So, and if you're wondering why I chose marketing, some people we might not get to it. The reason is marketers are open to trying new things. I think the stat is something like 80% of the campaigns they run fail. They're much more open-minded to trying, okay, let's try this, see how it goes, give it 6 months. And again, track that data. Like you need to really standardize that process. What are the metrics we're going to track to see, is there a difference before we instituted this and afterwards? And so, I just honestly think marketing is far more open. The other benefit is if you happen to attract a lot more better fit customers, you're going to see it in the back end there, in your own metrics.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and I think there's a growing number of people that are starting to think this way, which is to say that CS as an org is all well and good, and CSMs, I mean, are are incredibly valuable. But this notion of actually conducting CS type business throughout the entire company, I think, is a really interesting one, and in my view anyway, it's kind of where we're going, where there are these processes and these systems around like data hygiene and kind of inputs into the customer journey from various departments and whatnot, and to where eventually I think just at least my hope is that we are going to be focused holistically as a company on the customer, and not just saying that because we've said that for years, but like focused on the inputs into that journey and making sure that everybody has a piece of it, so to speak.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating. I really do. I think customer success, it's time to, it's the responsibility of CS leaders to step up and do this. Nobody's going to come to them and say, "Hey, would you like to move from little kids table to the big table?" It's
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
got to
yeah.
show that you're ready to be there. And it means researching, learning, understanding how businesses work. What drives
Hmm.
your CEO? What drives your CFO? How is that different from what drives your COO, right? And your CMO, your
Yeah,
head of product, like
sure.
all of these people, it's understanding. They all come from a different perspective and what matters
Hmm.
most to them. If you can figure that out and go to them and say, "Hey, I have like all this data here that I think might be helpful for you."
Yeah,
It's not going to cost anything, right? You've already
right.
collected all of it, your time,
Yeah.
or you can get tools to help analyze it, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I think most of them would be open to the idea if you could help, better their
For
metrics
sure.
and
Yeah.
help them out. I can't see many of
Yeah.
them saying no, but marketing is still the easiest to go to,
Yeah,
just in case.
because there's a natural alignment there for sure.
There is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to take a little bit of a hard right, because very recently you posted on LinkedIn, I think a couple weeks ago, a video that you had made with HeyGen, which if you haven't played with it, it's a fascinating tool. Um, which allows you to do all kinds of fun stuff, AI generated video, fun stuff, and translations as well. Was the example that you kind of posted about, where all of a sudden you were speaking Spanish even though you don't speak Spanish.
Mhm.
Um, and so I was curious about, do you are you the kind of person that kind of seeks out these kinds of tools and use cases
Yeah.
naturally? And then
Yeah.
what are some of the cool ones that you found recently? Because we're all tool nerds at the end of the day.
It is like I'm becoming like overwhelmed with this like new products being released all the time. I think what really fascinates me is how is it going to change our human to human interactions by interacting with AI? To me,
Yeah.
that's a more fascinating question
Hmm.
than the actual tools themselves.
Sure.
So I commented on somebody's post today. He's a Wharton professor, all about AI, and it was essentially it was in Chat GPT, and the prompt was saying that it can't do something, but he said, "Yes, you can. Now do it." So
Yeah.
it was like a
Right.
really hard push, and sure enough, AI came up, or sorry, Chat GPT came up with the answer he was looking for.
Yep.
And I commented and said, this is great. But if we're getting used to with Gen AI being able to just be that harsh with it, you don't have to be polite. You don't have to be sensitive because it has no
Right.
emotion.
Right.
How, like, I'm starting to think one level out. How is that going to impact our relationships as customers with the company and the company with customers? And then when you get a real live human on, what's going to happen?
Right.
Are we just going to
Yeah.
become so rude because we can be? because it has no
Yeah.
emotion. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
to me, so I haven't shared this in a long time. I also have a degree in philosophy. So
Yeah. Wow.
you take my nerdy, geography degrees and qualitative research, and then you add in the whole philosophy, especially ethics. That's what I focused in,
Sure.
biomedical ethics. I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out, because it was
Yeah.
like such a statement. Yes, now do it. And it was like, wow. I, I
Wow.
wouldn't say that to you, Alex, if you weren't giving me something that I thought you could do.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure
I
where this
really
is
wonder about that because like, um, I, uh, I mean, at the end of the day, the things that we're saying and the things that we are asking of, these algorithms, we are training it in a way, right? Everything that we input kind of finds its way in and kind of sticks there. And so I wonder, as these things become more, I guess, more intelligent or more analogous of the human species, um, if those kinds of signals will kind of sway the responses and the outputs to be either really terse or extremely polite. Like, I like to be polite with uh with ChatGPT just because it doesn't hurt, and
right, right.
I use please and thank you. I
So
mean, it's like stupid, but it's like, so I guess the philosophical question, if you want to get right down to it, is should we should we kind of be as we would want to be treated to when we're prompting, and will that affect kind of the outputs in the aggregate?
yeah, I'm like you. So if this is how I want to be in the world, it's practiced,
Yeah.
right? Being polite
Right.
is practiced. Being rude is practiced. I'm
Hmm.
just really worried about, and it's not going to be long, even with that Hey Jen video of me speaking Spanish, that's still
Sure.
me. It was my face. It was everything. I had my gestures. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
It's your
Um,
voice.
yeah, my voice, it was weird. I have to say,
Hmm.
it was really weird, but cool at the same time to see it. But pretty soon we're not going to be able to discern what is Gen AI
Yeah.
and what is a real human. And so I think of people in support. I think of CSMs. Like, how is that going to impact them and what they're able to do if people don't know what's real and what's not? Like, it really comes down to the
Right.
most basic thing, which is trust.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
our whole society is based on trust. Like, our human civilization is. In order to
Yeah.
survive, we must trust each other. And we trust each other through rules, regulations, social norms. This is one of them, right?
Hmm.
Be polite, be rude,
Yeah.
which, I don't know. It's like just blows my mind. Anyway, I'm fascinated by it every day. I'm researching stuff, and it's moving so fast. It's so
Yeah.
hard to
It
keep
really
up.
is.
Yeah.
Well, and the trust factor that you mentioned is, I think, right now probably the primary barrier, I guess you can call it, to really broad adoption. Because, I mean, I use ChatGPT almost daily and use it for, ideas generation, all that kind of stuff. I use it to, you know, feed transcripts of these conversations into, and
Yeah.
glean some insights out, which is great, which is a great tool. Um, but it's a long way away from me trusting it enough to just copy and paste the entire thing and put it somewhere. There's no freaking way, because yeah, you know, some things are good, some things are bad. It's a great way to kind of, make things more digestible. Um, but also, I think that you see these things being generated and they're very absolute. Even if they're factually incorrect,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're it's a little scary because it's that whole kind of proliferation of false information come to a head with Gen AI. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that develops.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we're in for a wild ride. I'm one of these people though, like
Yeah.
I'm so curious. Like my favorite question when I was
Yeah.
a kid drove my parents nuts. Why? No
Why?
mistake. I ended up in academia.
You were
Essentially,
one of
my
those.
job is finding out why. Why is it like this? What? And then the other
Yeah.
question is, what happens when I do this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm forever curious, and I do that in my personal life as well. Like
Yeah.
I I'm just a naturally curious person. If something, I always joke about this with my kids. If a door doesn't explicitly say I can't go in, then I think it's open for me just looking and seeing what's behind it. And that's led to some
Yeah.
very fun stories over the years of, oh God,
Yeah.
great, there's mom again. You know,
Yeah.
I'm
Who
so
exactly is authorizing people to go through this door? Because I think I'm authorized.
so I think much like we saw with social media when it first, like, I'm more thinking Facebook when social media,
Sure.
less so LinkedIn, but the positive things we saw initially and then all the negative consequences, this is going to be the same but different at some point. Very quickly, Alex, we are not going to be able to tell what is Gen AI and who is an actual person. Like,
Yeah.
it is going to become so difficult to tell the
Yeah.
difference. And so what does that mean for customers when they're sharing sensitive data? What does it, like, it becomes a lot about privacy, about, yeah, oh wow, it just like branches off into
Yeah.
so many areas. I always think that being transparent, even though it might be difficult at times, is still a better way to approach things than to be opaque, to lie, to, to falsify things. I think once trust gets broken, well, we know this. Once trust gets broken, it's very, very hard to repair. But going
Sure.
forward, I honestly don't know how customers are going to react when their trust is
Yeah.
broken and their privacy is I don't want to say invaded, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it's I'm scared and excited at the same. I keep, vacillating between these two.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like we're in an awesome time. I'm glad I'm alive. Oh, I'm so excited. And then I think that, God, I'm such a nerd. I really am. I keep thinking, wow, I'm
No.
glad I wasn't born 100 years ago, because
Yeah.
look at the
Oh,
cool
yeah. Well,
stuff that's
sure.
happening now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Totally. Um, well, but what you said, really hones in on something we were actually talking about pre-show, which was this whole notion of, asking somebody how they are and like getting an honest response back from them versus
Mm.
like this, I'm fine, how are you? And I think, we were saying like Europeans are quite good at this usually. Like if you ask somebody, my dad lives in Vienna, and if you ask a Viennese how they are, buckle up because they're going to tell you how they are. Versus that's not really the thing in like North America, where it's like, I'm fine, how are you? It's kind of like informal. But if I guess where I'm going at is being transparent with those kinds of things is something that is relatively natural with another human, but I don't. And what's interesting is I can see a world where perhaps you're more inclined to be transparent with an AI bot versus another human because maybe there's not like this judgment factor, or you're less inclined. But it's just interesting to see what use cases are going to evolve, what rapport building will look like in the future. Like if you're sending an AI version of yourself into a QBR, like what does that mean? Like what is that
Yeah,
all about?
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
don't know. It's
fascinating.
really, I was reading in China, they have these like live 24-hour product selling. There's a specific name for it. And there's a company that now in, I think it's less than a minute, they can take a video of an influencer selling a product, and they can create a generative avatar for them that is really hard to tell. Now, if this thing's going 24 hours a day, it's 11 o'clock at night. I wasn't reading that article and I was watching it. I would be hard pressed to figure out that it's not a real human.
Sure. Yeah.
But because I was reading the article, I was watching the videos, you could see like some idiosyncrasies that gave it away. So they already have 400,000 of these avatars right now. Well, that was last month when I was reading it. So it's even more than that. And what they're looking to do is add in an emotional level to it. So let's say sales are kind of slow because it's 2 o'clock in the morning and, you know, many people aren't online. Yeah. That avatar that is running live will be able to show disappointment, you know, like they're right now it's sort of just, you know, talking. It doesn't have a heck of a lot of emotion to it, but they said within the next 6 months, they're going to add that whole level to it. And so with that, it just makes it more convincing that you're watching the real person that avatar is based on talking to you, interacting. Now, mind you, it's one to many, right? But what about, we can use this right now in customer success with training.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Do we actually need somebody live when you could just go get an avatar, give them the script, run it through, do it a couple of times, get your sort of standard questions that people ask, get it to answer as if it's live? Like, it's just blowing my mind. I get so excited by that. And then I think, then what would you do with that CSM? What can they do instead of spending that, if it's like, let's say that runs an hour a week or 2 hours, you know, if it's run twice a week. Anyway, fascinating stuff.
It is fascinating. Part of me gets really excited about it, like you. Part of me wants to go buy a cabin in the woods. Legit. Okay. But back on the topic of tools, are there some really cool things that are out there that you might want to enlighten us with?
I really, honestly, I can't think of any. Like right now, all I can think of is that company that does it in China with those 400,000 avatars. Like I get so focused on that. There was HeyGen, which HeyGen, HeyGen, one word.
Took me a sec to figure that one out. Yep.
Yeah, it took, I think it was, I had to upload a minute or a minute and a half of me speaking, and then it translated it into Spanish and had me speaking Spanish. So I mean, that's a fantastic tool. But then you have like summarization tools, right? Like ChatGPT being one, but there's other ones that are, I know
like Update AI is
Update AI, and then I was reading about Gainsight as well has
customer
something
cheat sheet, which we just turned on.
Really,
and it's pretty dope. It's like real good.
Like there's so much out there, and I guess it depends on what you're using it for. Becomes like really. There isn't a blanket Gen AI that's for every use case. You have to find those specific tools. Like if it's education, like we talked about. Well, if you could take a script and now suddenly make it available, and I think HeyGen only has 4 or 5 languages, major languages, that it will translate to. But that could make it easier for somebody who English is not their first language and they prefer to listen to it, you know, in
Plus, I mean, there are, you know, L&D organizations that a massive element of their budget is dedicated to translation and regionalization. And that all of a sudden, if you're okay with having avatar-ish type, not quite human person delivering your training, you've just saved yourself a ton of money, which is amazing. We were, I part of my team is like customer education, and so we've been toying with the idea of using things like, for instance, Descript has the ability for you to record some voice into the tool, and then you can feed it a script and have it read it back to you. And I think where we kind of landed is, if you're going through an hour-long e-learning course, you're not going to want to listen to that for an hour, because it's pretty obvious that it's not human. But for like a 3-minute video, no problem. Like, perfect.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's what it is for right now. Like,
yeah,
really short. I would just watch that little clip. I don't even speak Mandarin. And I was watching it, and it wasn't for what they were saying. If I was, if I knew Mandarin, maybe I could pick up some subtleties. But most of us, when we're watching this, we're tired. Maybe we're a little distracted. Our brains might pick up that something isn't right, but we might not be consciously aware of it. So that's an ideal place to do it. And like, if you think in 6 months how much this is going to advance, then maybe 3-minute becomes 10, becomes 15, becomes the full hour. Like, we're going to get there in a really short period of time.
I think so too. Amazing time. And speaking of time, we are almost out of time, which is a real shame, because I feel like we could keep going.
Oh yeah.
But it's amazing, right?
I love it. Like, my hands are sweaty with excitement.
But before we go, I always like to ask folks what they're paying attention to. What podcasts you listen to, books you're reading, things you want to share with the audience that they should check out too.
So how about we take another 90-degree turn?
Sure.
Fascinated with the AI stuff, but it just became overwhelming to keep up. So I focus heavily on mindset. And so there's a couple of podcasts I listen to. One is I like some of the stuff Lewis Howes puts out. So HOWES. But I'm a real big fan, actually, of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And
cool.
if you've never checked out his stuff, wow, it is like amazing. I discovered it years ago, and I'm just so fascinated, because it's not just woo-woo out there stuff. He's bringing scientific rigor to it. They are collecting data constantly. Like, now at this point, it's tens of thousands of data points to prove that this works. And so it kind of in some ways reminds me of what customer success needs to do. Okay, that was great in the beginning, but now you've got to start like really getting serious about what you're collecting, standardize it so that you can prove, hey, look, we've got the numbers to show that this works. And this is how we collected the data. And it wasn't just, we grabbed some numbers and threw them together. There's a process that's rigorous behind this. So I really like Dr. Joe's stuff. And then for fun, totally for fun, I like listening to Dr. Mike. Fun. And he goes by DOCTOR, so doctor, spelled out Mike on YouTube. He's a young guy, family physician, but really is big on dispelling misinformation in the medical community. And he's I think he would have been in customer success if he didn't end up being a doctor. Like, he's just got such a big heart, young guy, and he's a boxer. Pretty wild. Yeah. Wow. So, and I think he's got more than 10 million subs now on YouTube.
Dang, that's a pretty big audience.
He's doing quite well, and and he's very open about his own struggles, his own challenges, and that's why I like it. I think like I said, I think he would have done very well in customer success had he not wound up being a doctor.
being a doctor, and yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool.
Mhm.
Thanks for sharing. I always love when folks share things that aren't necessarily customer success related, but are tangentially related, which is great.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, engage with you, hang out with you? All of that good stuff.
My second favorite place to hang out after Netflix is LinkedIn. Honestly, no joke.
LinkedIn.
My kids walk by when I'm commenting on and I'm laughing to myself. I'm smiling. They're like, they walk by my office. They're like, "Mom's so weird." I love to engage with people. So LinkedIn, definitely there. And if you want to check out, we've got tons of downloads and stuff to make your life easier. It's ati.ac is my company's website. And so really geared to customer success leaders, but there's downloads like for CSMs on the 45 best customer questions you can ask. No email required. Just go and have at it. Download them all if you want.
Get her done.
And start using them. Yep. Get her done.
That's great. 10 out of 10 can recommend. Go there. Absolutely. And we'll drop a link down in the description as well. So you can get there very, very easily. Well, I love talking with you. You, as you pointed out, you are a LinkedIn staple. You're posting, your comments are like stellar, always providing value, and I love your general approach to things, all CS related. So I really appreciate you taking the time out and joining us today. It's been a great combo.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, Alex. And I hope, honestly, I really hope that something I said has helped somebody else or unlock an insight that they've been struggling with. Like, that's always my goal, is to try to provide something that's helpful and make somebody's life just a little bit easier.
That's great. I think we probably scratched the surface on a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely did.
Maybe planted a few seeds for sure. Well, thanks again, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care. We'll see ya.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital Customer Success Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really helps us to grow and to provide value to a broader audience. You can view the Digital Customer Success definition word map and get more details about the show at digitalcustomersuccess.com. My name is Alex Turkovich. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time.